This is Harneys Offshore Litigation podcast number 3. My name is Ian Mann. I am joined by my colleague here in Hong Kong, Jayesh Chatlani. Welcome, Jayesh.
Thank you, Ian. It's good to be on the podcast.
Well, thanks for joining. And so the topic that we're going to discuss today is the Privy Council, which is the final appeal court for our jurisdictions, the offshore jurisdictions, BVI, the Cayman Islands and Bermuda. And I think you can say that you have in fact had the privilege of not appearing yourself as leading counsel, but certainly appearing as a junior in the Privy Council before. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. And it wasn't too long ago, 2017, in the Privy Council appeal from the British Virgin Islands in Chen and Stare. And
exciting. And then were you sort of intimidated by the grandeur of the place, or how did it go?
You know, I was actually. So it's currently being housed in the new Supreme Court building. And I remember very distinctly going through with, and there were all these metal detector checks and body checks and things like that. So that intimidation aside, as soon as I got into the room, it's courtroom number 3 over in the Supreme Court.
And in fact, that's the smaller of the courts. That wasn't even courtroom number 1, which is the big one, right?
Exactly right. But it was quite remarkable just walking into the courtroom, seeing our territorial Virgin Islands flag on the upper right-hand side of the courtroom, just behind the panel of justices. It was truly a very impressive sight. An interesting fact is it's also modelled after the original Star Chambers, at least the ceiling is.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Well, I was chatting to one of the ushers the last time I was in the Privy Council, and he was saying, they always try to make sure that the flag or whatever jurisdiction is being appealed from is in the corner, and I, as a joke, told him that he got the wrong flag. He'd got I told him it was the Bermuda flag instead of the Cayman Islands flag, and it did send him into a bit of spiral. Such is the care that they take in ensuring that these things are correct. But then also, I understand that until 2004, in order to signify that the court was sitting as a Privy Council as opposed to a Supreme Court or formerly a House of Lords, they used to put 2 silver inkwells that belonged to Queen Anne on the judge's bench. But that tradition was stopped when they kindly, the Privy Council that is, gifted those inkwells to the Supreme Court of New Zealand. So that tradition has now stopped. Rather sad, isn't it?
That is sad. I hadn't realised that fact, actually.
And so why is it that the Privy Council is still the court of final appellate jurisdiction of these jurisdictions? Do you think that will change?
It's something that's quite interesting. It's been the subject of debate in, I think, recent times, especially now that we have in 2005, of course, as you know, Ian, there was the Caribbean Court of Justice that was formed, and some of the jurisdictions that are geographically in our BVI Cayman area have joined the Caribbean Court of Justice as their final appeal court. But I don't think it'll change necessarily for the BVI Cayman Islands nor Bermuda, not in the foreseeable future anyway.
Well, they realise that having judges from a huge international commercial jurisdiction who have broad huge experience compared to local judges, if I may say, is a massive benefit. And these are jurisdictions that sell their sort of products of incorporation and establishment, whether it be company, funds, or trust to the rest of the world. And then you need a bit of consumer confidence, don't you, in your product? And I suppose having a hugely talented court of final appeal in the Privy Council in London is part of that consumer confidence package.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, it's exactly what sells the jurisdiction, I think, at the end of the day.
So tell me then about the sort of constitution of the court. There's legislation, obviously, for all this.
So the court comprises of the various law lords, and currently it's the Privy Council sitting in the current Supreme Court building. It's quite an interesting thing, actually, because I think people don't really always understand how much of an impact that the Privy Council or the current sort of Supreme Court of England, which, if you like, almost as Privy Council being a proxy for the Supreme Court, just has in the current common law jurisdictions, even in those countries that no longer appeal to the Privy Council as their final court.
Yes, I mean, because in fact they're no longer called laws. They have a title of Lord X, but they are Supreme Court justices technically, I suppose. But you're right. I mean, even countries who do not no longer have the Privy Council Court of Final Appeal, that the decisions of the Privy Council are going to be extremely persuasive. I mean, there is this famous case of De La Sala and De La Sala, which was an appeal to the Privy Council from Hong Kong when the Privy Council was the Court of Final Appeal for Hong Kong. And it said that, what do you do if a decision of the Privy Council is not strictly binding on another jurisdiction, yes, which it isn't? Surely it must be highly persuasive, being the same people. And essentially, that's what that case of De La Sala says, doesn't it?
It's absolutely right. Yeah,
which makes sense. And so, even if a decision of that's on appeal from Bermuda is handed down by the Privy Council, we'll take it very seriously in BVI or Cayman, essentially. I suppose there's a rough way of putting it.
No, absolutely right. I mean, I think it's it's as close to sort of being precedent without being precedent as you can get, almost. I mean, I was also thinking about the fact that, for example, in Hong Kong, 10 of our 14 non-permanent justices are the former law lords, if you like, or certainly they may have been before the Supreme Court. But 10 out of 14 of them are currently sitting as non-permanent justices. So what it means effectively is that there's this continuation of tradition and precedent in the lawmaking, even in these new jurisdictions.
Well, that is impressive. Good for continuity, and also good for things like common law recognition of insolvency proceedings, I suppose. And I mean, the Privy Council is very modern, isn't it, in comparison to some of our own courts in smaller jurisdictions?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things is that, for example, when I sat in the Privy Council, actually, I had the privilege of that very evening sitting back in the hotel room in London, being able to watch on television the televised access to the Privy Council hearing of that day.
Wow. You're watching yourself later on.
I was watching myself on BBC Parliament.
No one could accuse you of being vain, Jed.
No. But and even if you'd missed the sort of 3:30 in the morning showing on the BBC Parliament, it was also on. It subsequently is also uploaded online, so you can actually watch it on all of these hearings. You can watch them on the website.
Well, that's very impressive and great for clients as well.
Yes.
If they don't attend in person, I always encourage clients to actually attend the hearing so they can see what's truly going on and take ownership as well as participate in all the rest of it. But if they choose not to, then at least they can watch it live, which I think is so important, because then they can send you messages to make contributions.
Oh, absolutely, et cetera. It's real time. It's great.
But what are the future of the Privy Council for our offshore jurisdictions, do you think, Jayesh? I mean, what is this situation going to persist?
I think so. In my mind, for the foreseeable future, it almost must, because I mean the point's been made before. As I said, it's been debated, and the point's been made that some of these jurisdictions are almost too small in physical size, geographic, economic size. That it's the United Kingdom's contribution to legal certainty and security that this continues. And I think there is, as you say, there's a real investor confidence that comes in those jurisdictions.
I mean, it was very disappointing. We all know that in 2009, the Financial Times quoted Lord Phillips, who was then the president of the Supreme Court, as saying, in an ideal world, former Commonwealth countries would stop using the Privy Council and set up their own final courts of appeal instead. And I mean, that was worrying for all of us, because we know that our domestic jurisdictions don't have that capacity. We just don't have the infrastructure nor the superior judges to do that. But I mean, when Lord Neuberger was in Hong Kong at a conference recently after he retired,
yes,
I asked him this very point, and he made a personal statement that he thought that actually the cases that are being heard by the Privy Council are very important for those smaller jurisdictions. It was something good for the United Kingdom to do, but also it was very personal. Obviously, he said he quite enjoyed the appeals from the Privy Council. Some of them are obviously huge commercial cases like ours. So some of them may feel like smaller cases because you have this appeal as of right all the time, which no doubt is a bit frustrating if you're getting very small matters. But I really hope that the judges will look kindly upon their jurisdiction, the Privy Council, and the tradition will continue.
No, I hope so too. I mean, I have confidence it will.
Now, Jayesh, isn't it amazing how time flies when you're having fun? So it remains for me only to thank you for coming and extract a promise that you'll attend again for another podcast.
Thank you.